Okay, so hello everybody. This is our July practitioner embodiment session for the Integrative Nervous System practitioner program. And hopefully you got my email. So we had a good session on Tuesday about updates to the curriculum. And in the fall, we're going to have an week live sequence of sessions where every week we'll have one session going through step by step the main steps in the methodology of the program that represent nervous system rewiring, nervous system restoration, nervous system regulation on a sustainable level. So this is going to be part of the new cohort that's opening at the end of September, but it's also for all of you that are already in the program to really go in one kind of, if you've already gone through all the material, it allows you review, consolidate, see it in action, really focus in on your own process, your own nervous system process, right? And it also just allows you to be held in the space as a practitioner and allow me to guide you through that because it's different to go through each kind of piece of the program, each module. There's a lot of recordings, there's a lot of exercises, but I find it's really different to be able to go through the experience. So I hope that a lot of you can come live. And if you can't come live, no big deal. You can watch it back, right, on the recording. But I would encourage you to take it as if it were, really a session for you and you're really diving into each step of the process because that's ultimately going to give you that embodiment of the process. Okay. So on that note, today, what I want to do for our embodiment session is go over what really is the foundational process that we want to introduce to our clients or patients when we start to incorporate nervous system work into the way we're working with, whether it's through sessions or we're in a coaching program, a group program, or even in the context of a workshop about learning how to regulate your nervous system, this would be where we would really want to start. So it might be a little bit of review for some of you who've gone through all the material so far, of course. However, we really do learn through repetition. And what I would say from personal experience and from what I've heard from others as well is that every time you kind of go through this information, there's a different level that kind of clicks with you. And I know for me, especially in the first kind of 2 to 3 years, maybe, where I was really learning about different perspectives of working with the nervous system, I was incorporating different modalities. I was deeply trying to integrate some of the polyvagal theory and the somatic work that I was learning about. I would just watch more of those like introductory sessions over and over again. And I never felt bored really because every time I would, another layer would kind of resonate with me. And okay, I didn't really fully grasp that until now, right? Or you just become aware of another layer that you weren't aware of before. So, as always, I do encourage you to take a beginner's mind approach when we come to these things and really allow yourself to look at them as if you were learning them for the first time. So the first thing I want to do with that in mind is I want to pull up the main chart that helps us explain the main nervous system states. Because a lot of what we're doing at first is getting ourselves and our clients to be able to, what some refer to as somatic tracking, or understand our current state of our nervous system in our own body, right? And one of the first exercises that we introduce in this program is the 4-point check-in, which I do encourage people to teach to their clients and to continue to use as they take their client through a coaching journey or a series of several sessions. And so we will start by going into a 4-point check-in. I will guide you through that. And then we will come back to this and I will allow you to kind of reflect for a second and really see where you're landing today. Okay? So with that being said, I do invite you to just take a moment to ground yourself, right? So maybe if you're sitting, you can take a second to really support your spine, if that's an option with the chair you're sitting on. If you're lying down, you can take a second to really feel that support of the spine, of the sit bones from the bed or the yoga mat or the ground. And I want you to gently start to come into awareness of your body. And as we're doing this, there is an invitation to close your eyes if that feels comfortable for you today. But if it doesn't, you're welcome to keep a soft gaze in front of you. No problem. Okay. So we'll start at the toes and the feet. And remember, as you go through this process, if you feel the need to move a part of your body to come in more contact with it, or to circle, for example, your joints, you can do that as well. Okay. So coming into contact with the toes, the feet, the ankles, bringing our awareness there. Noticing, is there a lot of sensation in these areas? Is there a lack of sensation? Is there an impulse for movement? Or are there some areas that I really can't feel into, that feel maybe a little bit numb? And after the ankles, we're coming up into the calves and the shins. And again, if it feels good to like massage a little bit there, do a little bit of squeeze, you're welcome to do that to kind of wake up that part of your body, come back into it. Okay. And we might start a little bit of awareness of breath as we go through the body scan. Coming into the knees. We need any massage on the knees to bring a little bit more awareness there. We can do that. If we need any movement around that joint, we can do that. Coming up into awareness of the thigh area. We might put our hands there, press into them. Or we might just notice and observe what's there, what's present. Coming into the pelvis and the hips. We need to move or circle around the pelvis. Sometimes that feels good to kind of get back into contact with that area. Or we might just observe, what's going on there. This would include the uterus as well for women. And of course, you're welcome to place a hand there if that feels supportive, to come in deeper contact with it. And just breathe into these areas as well as we go through them. Coming into that area of the abdomen, the belly button, maybe placing a hand there, seeing what's going on there as we breathe in and out. As well as the lower back. You're welcome to place some hands there if that feels good as well. Remembering that we're just checking in for sensation, lack of sensation, impulse for movement. Okay, no right or wrong answer. Just getting curious about our body today. Coming into the ribs, noticing what's there. I really like to put my hands, I like to really connect with my body during these check-ins by putting my hands in these areas or doing a little bit of light massage, sending my breath there and awareness and just getting curious about what's present. It's a really gentle, beautiful way to to reinstate that relationship with our body. And now we're coming into the chest area and the heart space. And again, we might put hands. This is an area where we might do a little bit of like tapping to kind of wake it up. Whatever might feel good to you today. No right or wrong answer again. Okay, and then we're going to come into the shoulders. And again, maybe you want to massage, maybe you want to do a little bit of raising the shoulders and letting them gently fall, just enough to kind of see what's happening there. Whatever helps you come more into contact with that space. Breathing into it. Going down both arms. Okay, again, I like to add self-contact here, but it's totally up to you. Sometimes it's just good to observe first. Going to the hands, to the fingers. Not forgetting to breathe as I'm doing this. Okay. Going to the throat and the neck space as well. Feeling my breath come in and out through that space. Noticing any sort of sensations or blocks or tensions there. I like to put a hand again on this area as a form of somatic support, as a resource. Coming into the jaw area as well. This is a place where I might like to open the mouth. When I exhale, to kind of stretch the jaw a little bit, just see what's going on there. Moving up into those eye sockets, the eyebrows, noticing points of tension or straining. Coming to the forehead. It can be a nice place to place a hand. Depends, you can try it out. And finally, the top of the head, the crown of the head. And there's a lot of sensitivity around there, so it can be nice to tap along that crown of the head, that midline, to kind of come more into contact with it. Okay. So we've gone through our body element. We want to come and focus in now on our breath. So focusing in on where does my inhale start? Where does it really go to? Feeling into, is there a pause between the inhale and that before I exhale and I let it all out? Feeling into that. Noticing as my breath travels through this lower part of my body, up all the way through the chest, through the throat, to the nose, noticing if there's any areas that feel kind of blocked or restricted. And just observing that for now and maybe putting a hand there. When we check in on the breath, we're also looking for things like, are we holding our breath for some reason? Are we fully inhaling but not fully exhaling? Are we just taking in small sips of air instead of a full breathing cycle? We also check on it, are we breathing through our mouth, right? For some reason, we really want to use the nose, especially for the inhale. I mean, not terrible to use the mouth for the exhale, but definitely for the inhale through the nose. So we want to just always be checking on that as well and just taking those observations into account with the breath, noticing how shallow it is or how deep it is as well. And then going into the emotional level. And I would encourage you to take cues from sensation in the body, what's happening with the breath, to use those as trailheads rather, into emotions that might be present. And sometimes there's just like flavors of emotions. It's not 100% clear. That's okay as well. Just kind of Coming into that, what are the flavors that are present? Seeing if we can identify anything there. And also asking ourselves, how does the breath and the body inform our awareness of what emotion is present? And the final stage will be coming into the thought space and just letting ourselves notice the quality of our thoughts. Okay. Are they present here and now? Can they stay with the body and the breath? Are they worrying, planning, remembering something? Sometimes we look to our thoughts and we realize they're a little bit detached or dissociated from our current reality as well. Maybe we're kind of off daydreaming. And that's also an observation of the nervous system. And we're also looking for, are these thoughts, do they seem pretty accurate, not overly negative, right? It's natural to have a little bit of a negativity bias, but not overly negative, overly hopeless. Doesn't mean every thought has to be positive, but does it feel more grounded in reality, reasonably positive outlook kind of thing? Okay. And just taking a second to put these four levels of awareness together. Okay. And what I'll ask you to do now is very gently move your fingers, move your wrists, your ankles, your toes. If you need to move around the knees or pelvis or hips or stretch, take a minute to do that. And then very gently open up and come back to this chart. We're going to practice orienting. If you guys remember what is orienting, it's allowing our eyes to take the neck for a walk. And this helps with safety signaling for our nervous system, which is what we're really interested in, right? We allow the eyes to take the neck for a walk around the room. We look at 4 or 5 points. Might look behind each shoulder. If there's a window, it's lovely to be able to look out far. Our nervous system gets a good safety signal from that. Okay, and then we really come back to the screen. And I noticed like a little natural sigh, a little natural downshift in my nervous system. You might notice that as well. Okay. And we are going to just look at that information, that observation we collected from this experience. And we're just going to notice, where am I really sitting in this map of nervous system states? And sometimes people will say, I do feel like I have a reasonable amount of cues that I'm in the green zone, but I also notice a little bit of sympathetic. Maybe I notice a little bit of tension in my shoulders, for example, my neck. I notice a little bit more shallow breathing. I notice a little bit of anxious thoughts or more so planning what comes next. But I also notice some cues of the ventral. So maybe I also notice this sense of groundedness. I notice a sense of being really at peace with being here in this present moment, doing this exercise. I might notice a little bit more neutrality or even good feelings in my body and my breath. Right, and it's not set in stone, and there's times where we're also in that gray dotted line, which we refer to as that freeze line, where we go from the I can mentality to I can't. And we also have moments where we are more in dorsal vagal, where we do feel a little bit more shut down, a little bit more dissociated sometimes from our body, from the reality of our life. Okay, and so just paying attention to all these things, those 4 points, and understanding where in the nervous system am I really sitting right now based on all of those 4 points. And this is just a reminder that that is the 4 point check-in process. And it might not always be this long exercise like I just did right now. I just took you through it in a very detailed way. But this is something that we ultimately want our clients to be doing multiple times in the day. We want them to learn to be able to identify relatively what's happening in their nervous system and answer that basic question, am I regulated or am I dysregulated? And regulation would mean we're in the green zone, and dysregulation would mean that we are outside of it. Okay. Um, and the basic kind of question that would come after that, if I do know I'm outside of the green zone, would be what is a safety signal or a resource that I can use in this moment to help my nervous system get a little bit closer to that green zone? Remembering that the overall goal for our clients is not necessarily that they're never going to go into red, they're never going to have a moment of freeze, or they're never going to have dorsal vagal. That's part of the human experience. But the idea is that we want our nervous system to have a high capacity and be very resilient so that it can come back to that ventral vagal very quickly. Okay, so just keeping that all in mind, noticing where you're coming in, where you're sitting. Um, And noticing if I'm not completely in ventral, what comes to my mind as a resource or safety signal to help myself get back there. Now, with that, I want to bring in an important infographic, and I can send this out to you guys after. For all of you that were not here as well live, you can reference it, but let me show you it really quick. I just made this actually because it seems kind of insignificant, I think, but I really want to draw more significance and importance to it. A framework that we start incorporating in the check-ins and that we'll hopefully carry throughout the entire client journey. And this is what I call the 3 A's. So, in the sense of the nervous system and these 4-point check-ins, what are we trying to do? The first step that you just did right now is what we refer to as the awareness step. Um, Recognizing what nervous system state is present. Are there particular emotional states or patterns present? Or parts? And if you haven't yet gotten to the part module, it's okay, but we also are starting to notice, is there a part here? We're able to, in our awareness, stay with our experience long enough to realize, what is my body doing? Is it just relaxed, calm, neutral? Is there certain areas of tension, of increased sensation? Does it kind of want to fidget and move around? Or is it maybe a little bit, I don't feel a lot of areas of my body and I feel almost as if I'm kind of floating above my body? Okay. Noticing the breath like we just did, noticing any emotional states and thoughts. So this is just the awareness layer. Now, after awareness, before we go to that action item of, okay, now I need to implement a resource right away to help my nervous system feel safe, we want to take a moment, and this is just a micro moment, to make sure we are cultivating an acceptance attitude towards what our body and our nervous system is showing us through the check-in. Especially when we're living with chronic symptoms or chronic conditions like anxiety, we have a tendency to start to react to what's happening in our body as if it was actually a stressor or a threat in itself. So people might check and they realize, oh my gosh, I'm in sympathetic again. Why is that? And they actually get more frustrated with themselves, activating that stress response in the body, um, and creating almost like an alarm signal in their nervous system around the fact that they're feeling anxious. So this kind of becomes counterproductive because instead of using that awareness to kind of as a gateway into regulation, we're now using the awareness as an alarm signal for our body to say, oh gosh, something's wrong, something's wrong. So we really try to focus on, okay, can I one, be with and understand what's going on here, but can I deeply accept that my nervous system is doing this for a reason? Every emotion is for a reason, every state of the nervous system, every part, if you already are on the part aspect of the curriculum, every part is there for a reason. Okay. Um, and we have to get into this attitude of radically accepting whatever comes up and also not denying or rejecting the reality of the situation and accepting as well. It means accepting as well if I am, there is some sort of anxiety or frustration, anger, sadness, fear flowing through me for whatever reason. It's an acceptance that that's the case. So that's really important. And then the last step would be the action piece, which is where we use resourcing. So how do I, in the moment, depending on where I'm at, how much time I have, what's available to me, how do I resource my nervous system to let it know it's safe? This could be something as simple as what we did right after that 4-point check-in where we opened our eyes and we allowed our eyes to take the neck for a walk. Remember that that's called orienting. Okay, and that's a great foundational resource to send a safety signal to the nervous system. Other resources can be going on a short walk outside, nature, right? Taking a cup of tea, taking a glass of water, an essential oil, any of our breathing practices, any of our body-based practices like postural changes, swaying from side to side, tapping, bilateral tapping. Maybe we're going through our tapping points that we learn in the energy module. These are all different types of resources that we use to send our nervous system a safety signal when we notice it is dysregulated. Okay, so that's where the action piece comes from. With that, let me see here. Like I said, I'll send that to you guys. I do want to go over again in your module run one resources. You will have this document um, called Nervous System Resources Updated. And this helps you and your clients start to understand what are the resources I have available to me to use when I do a check-in and I notice I'm dysregulated. And this also gives them a space or you a space to start to add things on as you go through more of your training and you learn more. Oh, this breathing exercise works really well for me. This somatic exercise of swaying side to side or the tapping works really well. And I'm going to add that to my resources. So remember that, here we go. Our resources, I divide them into 3 aspects, which is the inner resources, outer, and relational. And as humans, we need all 3. We need things that help us regulate that don't rely on others or other objects or other environments. And a lot of those things are things we learn in this program, right? Like different types of breathing and breath work. Movement, we're not necessarily learning these things right now, but you might already have those present in your life, or your clients might have them, and they might be able to use either short or long practices. Grounding exercises, we definitely have those. Visualizations and meditations are inner resources. Journaling can be for some people. But these are not the only options, right? Of course, you might have, maybe for you, you love to just go on a walk and like take photos, and that's really regulating for you. For example, or maybe you like to write poetry. Maybe there's a lot of different options there. And what I just am emphasizing is these are just some examples for you guys to work with to understand the concept, but they're not set in stone. And then next we have the outer resources, which would be the outer resource that I said about going to take photos, it would actually fall here because it's more of an environmental support. You need like a camera and you need to go outside to do that. But nature walks, teas, blankets, a safe space in your house or some environment where you feel really you notice your nervous system feels relaxed and safe there. This can also be things like essential oils, musical elements, sound elements, um, or even things like using herbs or supplements or medications that do help you downshift or regulate the nervous system as needed. And then we have relational resources. So this could be with animals or humans, but this is just the foundational idea that we as mammals are not meant to live alone and regulate in isolation. We are meant to use also relationships and relational spaces with humans, with animals as a form of regulation. Okay, and those are just examples. Um, and one thing I really like to do with my clients is have them do an inventory of what they already have available in these three categories. And it's interesting here because you can kind of see some people will have like a lot of the inner resources cultivated, but then they have almost no co-regulation based resources. So depending on other people in a relationship context is really hard for them. Or you might have, people with a lot of the co-regulation and not a lot in the other two categories, which is more of this indication of that person is very dependent on seeking safety cues in other people, and finding a sense of security kind of in other people. And again, it's not necessarily bad or wrong, but we want to pay attention to those patterns because that can tell us where certain aspects of our nervous system, our attachment system might be a little bit dysregulated. Okay, so it's just good to do this. Do this for yourself, do this for your clients. What resources do you already have? And then obviously, as you go through the modules, you go through the program, you learn a bunch of resources. You learn foundational resources, different vagal toning resources, breathwork-based resources, changes in body movement, posture resources, energy-based resources. Those are all little exercises or practices that would go in these inner resources category. Or if you're using something like essential oils or music or nature and all that good stuff, it's an outer resource. And then co-regulation is really something we have to cultivate through relationships. Okay, so again, this is in the resource section in module 1. Um, and this is kind of like really those initial steps of understanding the check-in, the 4-point check-ins with your clients, having them identify what state they're in. If I'm dysregulated, I'm out of green zone, accepting that, understanding that my nervous system has chosen this state for a reason, and then finding an action item, a resource item that we can implement. Okay, and remembering that sometimes it's as simple as just a little bit of a self-touch, eyes looking around the room, coming back to a deeper diaphragmatic breathing pattern. It might be, you know what? I could really use a co-regulation resource, so I'm going to call up my sister, my dad, my coworker who I can count on to talk about certain things. And I'm applying that resource and I'm starting to tell the nervous system that, look, I know the situation or whatever's going on, you're perceiving a lot of danger, but actually right now you're safe. Okay, so that's what we're sharing with the nervous system when we do that. And we want to really get people to start to repeat this process of awareness through a check-in, acceptance of what's going on, self-compassion, right? And the action item. It's really ideal for them to start doing it at least like 3 to 5 times a day. And I would really say 5 times a day is better. That might seem like a lot, but once you start to get into it, it becomes very quick. Like even right now, I can just check in on my body. I can notice where I might be holding a certain tension or posture. I might notice certain sensations. I can check in my breathing and notice I'm taking a nice full breath or not. My emotional state and my thoughts. And then I can decide, even right now, as I'm giving this practice class here, I can resource myself, right? This resource might be just this really light self-touch, Okay, I could even just do it one arm at a time, right? The little fascial squeezes. I don't think anyone's going to say, oh my gosh, why are you squeezing your arm like that, right? Or just even go to your fingers one by one. And this is a resource, for example. Okay. So this is really one of those foundational steps we want people to get set up with. Um, and once they start to understand the check-in process and they're able to do it, we can start to talk about the five key foundational resources that I like to add to people's list right away. Um, with that being said, there will be people who come in and we introduce the 4-point check-ins and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't remember body, breath, emotions, thoughts. That's overwhelming. I can't come into awareness of all those things just yet. With those people, what I would like you to do is to pick one category, preferably the breath or the body, for them to work with for the first 1 or 2 weeks until they get comfortable checking in on that. And then once they're comfortable, hopefully we can say, okay, look, it seems like you're able to check in really well on your breath throughout the day. Can we add in the body piece now? I also want you to become aware of the tension, the posture, the sensation. And then maybe after a week, that becomes more natural. And we say, can we layer in the emotional piece now? Right? And just to the point where you eventually get them checking in with those 4 levels consistently. But it's okay if at first we need to just focus in on one, because for some people it's overwhelming to do 4, for some people it's no big deal. Okay. And then, like I said, awareness, acceptance, and then action. So any kind of questions up until that point, any doubts, confusion? We're doing well. So here we would like to introduce the 5 foundational resources to our clients and to ourselves. And one of them we already practiced today, which is the orienting practice of using your eyes to take your neck for a walk, orienting around the room, right? This is really good for people that also have a lot of sympathetic activation because it allows the eyes to relax once they see that there's no immediate threat. There's no need to kind of strain those eye muscles and they can fall back into their sockets. And then we also have the self-contact as a foundational resource. And there's a lot of ways to do self-contact. It can just be like squeezing of the palms, going through each finger, squeezing 70 or 80% each arm, putting a hand on certain areas of the body. Okay. I really like this forehead and back of the skull one. Okay. The abdomen, self-contact, right? This is one of our foundational resources. So orienting, self-contact. Remember too with orienting that if we are dealing with ourselves or people who are feeling closer to panic, with orienting, we can go beyond just the eyes and we can add in other senses. So we might add in a particular smell. We might add in touch. So we touch a texture, we feel a texture of our clothes or some other object we have. We might add in taste, actually, if someone is definitely closer to panic attacks, we will have them carry around like peppermints or sour candies or whatever they can eat that gives a pretty potent flavor in their mouth. And being able to focus in on that taste and that sensorial experience will also help downregulate for people who are closer to panic, or if someone's struggling with more dissociation, more of that dorsal vagal, it helps them kind of come back into the present moment experience. So sight is good, but yeah, you can add taste, you can add smell, you can add sounds you hear, and you can add texture. So again, if someone, a client you're working with or you does get really close to overwhelm or panic, or they feel a little bit distanced and dissociated from their bodies suddenly, you want to get them kind of prepared to have sensory stimulus to orient every sense in their body when they need it. Okay, so I just wanted to add that quick note there. The self-contact is really good. I know in some of our other sessions where we've gone back and forth, we've talked about like different forms of self-contact. I gave you a couple today with this. It can be placing a hand, it can be the little squeezes, it can be also just tapping. Okay, so this is really gentle and light for people who are really sensitive. Just tapping, like I'm tapping on the jawline right now, because this is an area that often gets very tight and tense and locked. I can massage behind the ear, starting from the top and going down. Okay, so just something little by little, we get to know what cues feel safest for ourselves, for our clients. I like this one. It's a wrist hug. So we just grab the wrist and we do like a 70 or 60% compression there. Kind of breathe into that. Okay. And remember, one of our foundational resources is also diaphragmatic breathing. So taking time for the person to regulate their breathing rhythm again. I like to actually put a hand on this little dome under the rib cage and have them feel the expansion of the breath when I inhale and exhale. And just feel that movement in that diaphragm area under the dome of the rib cage at first. And then start to get them to go, or yourself, to 3 inhale, 3 exhale. I feel comfortable at 3. Now I'm going to go to 4. Okay, now I'm going to go to 5. If I feel comfortable with 4, 4, then I go to 5, 5. Okay, and this is just really getting that diaphragm back online and getting a more consistent, regulated breathing rhythm back online. If someone is already more overwhelmed, more panicked, we don't want to start with the 5, 5. We want to start with like 3, 3. And then once they get that picture, that done, we can go to 4, 4, and then 5, 5. Okay, so self-contact, orientation, diaphragmatic breathing. And then we also have grounding. So grounding is something as simple as feeling into the physical contact of my seat on the chair, my spine on the chair, surrendering to gravity, 10, 15%. We might push into the ground, okay, with our feet to get more proprioceptive feedback. Sometimes people like to even move around. So like swaying, if you're in a chair or standing up and like swaying even from side to side, gives your body more proprioceptive feedback. And that can help some people ground and feel more physically present here in their body, more connected, more supported. Okay, and grounding can also use like a visualization element if you like. You can visualize a root. So a root that comes, for example, out of your feet that connects you to the earth. Or maybe it comes out of the sacrum and it connects you to the earth. And using that visualization to feel into, okay, where is my root? Where is that connection? Remembering that I'm not just going to float away, that I have this kind of constant form of support from the earth as I go through my life as a human here. Okay. So remembering those different ways of grounding. Sometimes people have to experiment with this a little bit. before they find a way that really feels effective for them to feel more of that like support and connection with the ground. And if people do have an option to go outside in the bare feet or even sit down on the ground, lie down on the grass, like depending on where they are, what season it is, that's lovely. And I would encourage them to do that because it's going to be even more powerful. Okay, so that's a resource. And then our last foundational resource that I always emphasize is containment, which is the principle that I have control over what I put my energy, my conscious awareness, and focus on, especially for those of us that have experienced trauma. The brain, the nervous system sometimes will have intrusive thoughts, ruminating thoughts. It might bring back memories in inappropriate times, or it might go into obsession or rumination. And it's all part of the nervous system response. But containment is bringing in this idea that I actually can choose when I kind of want to go into the depths of something and focus on it, and when it's not an ideal time. So I will have my clients imagine some sort of container, like a box or a jar or a locker that they visualize, realizing anytime I start feeling these intrusive thought chains coming up, these ruminating thoughts, memories that are not appropriate to be processing right now, I can say, okay, brain, okay, nervous system, I see that you're worried about this or you're focusing on this right now. I understand why. I understand you're trying to protect me. But right now is not a good time because I have to give a work presentation or I have to have a discussion with maybe a person that isn't actually a very safe person to be emotional around. So I have to kind of reserve those emotions for now. And I put that in the box, and maybe I have a key and I lock it up in my visualization or whatever it is, or my jar. And I'm going to put it to the side for now. And it doesn't mean that I'll never come back to that. And I want to emphasize if there are patterns and thoughts and memories that are coming up a lot, that does probably need to be worked with and processed, over time through some of the other practices that we learn in the program, like our focusing practice, working with our parts, right? Working with embodied emotional processing. But not right now. And just this concept and this visualization gives us more agency, more power in the process to just feel like, look, brain, look, nervous system, I always understand you're protecting me. I'm so grateful for that. But I'm actually the one who has the choice about what I focus on, what I put my energy into right now. Okay. So we introduced this concept early on as well as one of those foundational resources. And these 5 resources is what I like to teach people early on to be very comfortable with so that they can start doing their check-in processes, seeing what's happening in their nervous system, practicing acceptance, practicing that self-compassion acceptance attitude towards my nervous system, my emotions. We know they're there for a reason. We study that right in module 1. And then finally, what action item can I use to send a safety signal? And every time I'm sending a safety signal, I am effectively starting to repattern neural pathways for safety instead of for threat. So this is not the only process that we do within this program, but it is foundational to start to do this in a repetitive way so that slowly but surely we do get a better baseline of more resiliency, more capacity in the nervous system, more less hypervigilance right around potential threat signals, and more awareness of being able to come into that safety, come into that deeper state of regulation more easily, more naturally over time. Okay, so this is really that essential foundational process that I wanted to emphasize today. I really wanted to emphasize, just to kind of recap, the 4-point check-ins, the acceptance, awareness, acceptance, action framework, resourcing, and the resource list, which is in Module 1 resources, and then 5 foundational practices. So 4 different items. I know we went through a good amount pretty quickly, so I hope this is useful for you all. And this is really the foundation we want to work on for ourselves and for others, and then continue to build on that. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you guys back in August. And like I said, check that email about the details for the upcoming cohort. You have the opportunity to refer people to the program and earn referral bonus. And you also have the opportunity to join the 8 live sessions to work on your own nervous system journey and your own process. So we will see you soon. And if you have any questions, as always, you guys know you can reach out to me. Hope this was useful.